What are RFK's chances of being successful this November 2024 when we have the US elections? A new birth time has surfaced, and I'd said I'd look at his chart again, paying more attention to the ascendant and the midheaven. Will eclipses be on RFK's side this year? And will his solar return give us an inkling of what this journey is about for him? Of course, this was a method that we couldn't use before with no birth time whatsoever, but other tools are available to us now. So we'll go to the computer and I can explain a little more.
Just to recap, this new birth time that we're working with comes from a website that specialises in political astrology. So I've put the source on the left here, and you can see the astrologer's name, Jude Cowell. And this is the one, we'll give it a go and we'll see, does this make much difference to RFK Jr. come November 2024? It's that all-important ascendant and midheaven that we're really honing in on in this video. Will we see very important sign changes? These often happen at pivotal times in our life. Well, the progressed sun is in Aries, as we knew, and it will not be in a particularly demanding or conflictual relationship with the progressed moon. Now, the progressed ascendant is around 28 degrees of Virgo, and so it's slowly separating away from a helpful trine to the sun, and over the coming couple of years it will go on to perfect a trine with natal Mercury too. And that ascendant sun trine will be hugely helpful for RFK to get out there, to express his vitality, his true solar nature. These aspects of him will be working in tandem together. And of course, with such a Capricornian emphasis, we could anticipate this being helpful for career furtherment. We can also see that his progressed sun is applying almost exactly to a quincunx, or in conjunct with his natal Saturn. I'm not sure this would be particularly helpful. It does certainly speak of applying determination to overcome difficulty, of keeping one's shoulder to the wheel, but it isn't intrinsically an aspect where we would expect success in and of itself. That solar arc ascendant recently perfected a square to RFK's natal moon and is slowly separating away. And in this we can see the emphasis on emotions. This is a profoundly emotional time in RFK's life, and we will see a repetition of moon and Chiron themes as we continue through this video. And what of the progressed moon? Well, it's now moving into an angular house. In the previous few weeks, it will have conjuncted that natal Mercury and the descendant as it progressed upwards into the sign of Aquarius. That contact with Mercury and his descendant will have been extremely helpful in the few weeks leading up to election day. The need for clear thinking, for persuasive oratory, for great communication will all have been pivotal in the last few weeks. And the fact that the moon is in an angular house can also signify greater power and change. And as already covered in a previous video, we can see that that progressed Mars is just 4 seconds away from perfecting a trine with his natal Pluto, and that immense drive, determination and ruthlessness will have greatly helped RFK. And on the theme of Mars, we can also see that solar arc Mars is now separating from a conjunction that it has been making with his natal Sun. So again, that determination, the drive, the copious energy needed for this year, it's there in his chart. And does this new birth time make any difference to the transits that will be around during 2024, and especially leading up to the 5th of November? Well, we all know that Pluto has drifted back into Aquarius. And of course, this new descendant is in early Aquarius. So we can see that not only does RFK have some extreme force assisting with his oratory, with his ability to use communication to influence, manipulate, persuade his audience, but he's also at a pivotal time in relationships, his formal relationships. And we know that wherever Pluto goes, those are areas of our life where we will be dragged into understanding the deeper and perhaps more unconscious parts of our psyche, and the experiences that we have may sometimes be traumatic. The end game is to place us back into our own seat of power, our personal power. We certainly know that change is afoot. And with this new birth time, we also know now that transiting Saturn, moving through Pisces this year, will actually trine RFK's moon. And this will be as it makes a simultaneous trine with his natal Mars. And all of this will be very helpful and direct our emotions and our will towards the goals that we are pursuing. Transiting Jupiter will make a helpful, if rather weak, sextile to his natal midheaven, which will provide some assistance to him. And of course, we already know that he is experiencing his Jupiter return this year. However, transiting Saturn is going to make a square to his natal Jupiter. And this is another less helpful aspect to have. That new midheaven time, if correct, means that transiting Chiron is going to conjunct his midheaven, and this will be very much in orb even on election day. This Chiron midheaven theme is very important, and we'll see again its placement when we have a look at RFK's solar return. We must ask ourselves, is this a sign that midheaven aims are going to be painful for RFK? The position on the midheaven suggests this is quite a public transit. Our midheaven is the part that the world out there can see. Transiting Mars has been moving slowly through RFK's 12th house. It has slowed because it is going to turn retrograde in December, and on the 5th of November, its position is 17 minutes of Leo. It is strengthened as it draws closer to the ascendant, and I don't see that opposition to Mercury as being unhelpful. What is interesting is that the whole Mars journey through to early December, when it turns retrograde and retraces its steps, will also mean that Mars opposite Pluto dynamic is playing out on RFK's ascendant-descendant axis. And so we can consider the determination, the sheer ruthlessness that goes with this aspect. But we have to keep an open mind about these Pluto-Mars oppositions, because at times they can even come with violence. And as they affect the charts of a good couple of candidates, this is not a peaceful combination. And a bit of me wonders whether the election will be straightforward. And we should consider, do any eclipses in 2024 affect these new positions? And indeed they do, because we have a total solar eclipse coming on the 8th of April and landing very closely on this new midheaven. This is not a worrisome eclipse. The flavour of this Saros series is one of being flooded with inspiration, great ideas, new ways of tackling issues. These sudden insights may even enter our life through our dream world, but nonetheless, we have a massive influx of positive energy, which will be inspirational. The eclipses that come in the second part of 2024 are less helpful. Unfortunately, RFK is not particularly affected by those. And lastly, we're able to look at the solar return with this new birth time. And so on the left, you can see the solar return on its own the moment at which RFK's sun returned to exactly its natal position in 2024. And on the right, we have the solar return planets placed around RFK's birth chart on the inside. I do find solar returns can be a little tricky to interpret, but if we have a look at the chart on the left to start with and just pick up the general themes within it, get a flavour and a taste of how the energy is playing out for RFK in 2024. This is very much an out there in the world kind of chart. There's such a heavy emphasis on the houses 7 through to 12, and we have Saturn on the midheaven too. If we look at that solar return sun, it's in the very intense 8th house, and it's a double whammy because it has Pluto on it too. Moreover, that Pluto is in the anaretic degree. It is literally just a few minutes away from transitioning into Aquarius. So that's a very intense sun. It has a make or break feeling about it, and it's squaring that Aries moon in the 11th house. This has a feeling of quite deep-seated emotions, of conflict too, of forced change. That Saturn on the midheaven receives helpful aspects. Jupiter, Mercury and Mars are all assisting with midheaven type goals. We might anticipate steady growth towards a midheaven aim that involves increased responsibility, great responsibility. And Venus conjunct the descendant is trining that Aries bundle of Chiron, Node and the Moon. The 11th can have political overtones because it is also about larger society, and it's possible that RFK is able to benefit from emotional connections from groups of people. But that Neptune is squaring Venus, and it's also squaring the ascendant-descendant axis. And so this may not be as straightforward as hoped. Will there be some undermining, confusion, deception, disillusion? We can't rule it out. And so if we turn to the right and take a look at how these solar return positions affect RFK's natal chart, and of course we can very quickly spot that Chiron Node Moon bundle is conjunct his natal midheaven. Having the node on a personal point like this can often speak of a fated or karmic connection. This depends on your individual belief system, but however one views it, it is a very important connection, and one often finds key developments unfolding in life as the transiting node moves round our chart and makes contact with the ascendant and the midheaven. To have that node together with the moon and Chiron on the midheaven immediately makes me think of the phrase wearing our heart on our sleeves. But is it a broken heart? After all, that Chiron is actually squaring Robert's natal moon, and the solar return moon is squaring his natal sun. In fact, we can see that particular grouping is reinfusing that difficult natal T-square that Robert has, spanning the Cancer-Capricorn axis and squared by Neptune. So it is reinvigorating the natal difficulties in his chart, and perhaps showing us how pivotally important it has been for RFK to make this journey in the footsteps of his father and his uncle before him. The solar return midheaven falls into his 8th house of intensity, beginnings and endings, and the solar return ascendant is quite near his Jupiter, but not as near as I would have liked. It is some 6 degrees out. The solar return Jupiter squares his ascendant, and it opposes his natal Saturn. This speaks more of growth being retarded in some way. And the solar return Saturn on the midheaven is not actually well supported by RFK's natal chart. If I was asked whether I would put good money on a bet as to whether RFK would win the presidential elections, I would be hard-pressed to part with the money. There aren't any out-and-out suggestions of humiliation and defeat, and neither are there clear signs of victory. What is very clear to me is that great personal growth is made this year, that this is a very intense year. It's a year of deepening relationships, of great insight into oneself, the exercising of personal demons. And for those of you that support this very brave man, I'll just reiterate that we're working with a proposed birth time where we cannot establish its veracity. So please don't lose heart. We have simply been checking whether the new ascendant and midheaven positions are substantially affected by the new birth time.
Thank you for watching. The next video I will be doing is going to look closely at the United States chart through the rest of this year, when we have some quite dramatic contacts being made. Until then, do take very good care of yourselves.